Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Our webinar with Hanwha Tech in America to look at solving problems in the financial sector with object and attribute detection. Today, I'm happy to be joined by two of my colleagues here, Omar and David. I'll let them introduce themselves here, and then I'll show you the agenda, and we'll go from there.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Omar Valdemar. I'm with Hanwha, obviously. We're here to talk about finance solutions for you folks. Let me introduce myself. Here we go. Omar Valdemar, 34 years in the industry, 26 years in banking. I was with City National Bank for 26 years, where I was a senior vice president and manager of corporate security systems. I managed a team that engineered, designed, and implemented the security technology, and we also managed the life cycle of all our devices. I was very involved with enterprise risk management, maturing our processes while I was there, and I'm here to support you folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm David Uberig, Business Development Manager for Finance. I've been in the industry for about 20 years now, focused predominantly in the banking and financial vertical, but also a lot of background in the retail sector. And like Omar, here to support the sector.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining, or thanks to the two of you for joining. Quick introduction and agenda here. We're going to do a brief introduction to the Hanwha Group and Hanwha Techwin, and then we'll start talking about how we focus on cybersecurity, which is a really important aspect in the finance industry. Then we'll talk about some of our advanced analytics and how they can power object classification and attribute extraction. We'll talk about how they can also be used with analytics. We'll do some quick video demonstrations. And then we'll talk about many of the popular camera models that we have in our lineup that are designed for the financial markets to solve common problems. We're not going to go through every model. We have a huge lineup, but we'll kind of cover some of those highlights there. Any questions that you have, please feel free to type them in to the Q&A, or if you have any other issues, use the chat. We'll take any questions at the end, time permitting. If there is not time, we'll reply individually from there. The webinar is being recorded. It will be available for replay and the slides in PDF format on the website in a couple days after the session today. And finally, all participants have been put into listen-only mode. So again, use the Q&A or the chat for any questions from there.
Thanks, Aaron. So, many people have heard of Hanwha Techwin in the industry, but don't really know too much about our overall organization. So the Hanwha Group is a global conglomerate company, proudly South Korean, and involved in many, many sectors, about a $60 billion in revenue company, and part of the global Fortune 500. So we involve ourselves in different sectors, including defense, chemical, manufacturing, aerospace, and green energy alternatives, being one of the largest producers of solar panels under the Q-Cells brand. So a very large company in many sectors. Next slide, please. So Hanwha Techwin is a division of the overall Hanwha Group. Hanwha Techwin has been manufacturing security equipment for over 30 years, and we physically manufacture that equipment in our factories in Korea and Vietnam with our employees using products manufactured by Hanwha Precision Manufacturing in order to do things, robotics, chip placement, and other manufacturing processes. The factories are powered by our Q-Cell technology, and our products feature our WiseNet system-on-a-chip processors. So everything that we manufacture is sold under the WiseNet brand, and we don't OEM or license those products to other brands or manufacturers. When we look at the compliancy issues, NDAA obviously is significant in our industry, as is becoming more important as well, FCC. We're also GSA and TAA compliant. So again, really, significant ability to really drive our manufacturing and manage our supply chain, which has given us a tremendous advantage over the past several years of the pandemic, where although we can't say we've never had any supply chain issues, we've been certainly able to manage them much better than most. So one of the things you can count on with Hanwha is that we do have tight control over our overall supply chain. Thanks, Aaron.
So on cybersecurity, what Hanwha does very well is we have strong cyber controls, IT management controls, risk management controls. And Aaron's going to speak on many of those controls that we do have. But what I did want to talk about too is that when security devices are implemented at our organizations or your organizations, we worry about managing risk, mitigating risk. IT risk is one of them. We also want to mitigate safety and security risk, and we want to mitigate reputational risk. And based on the fact that we have strong cyber controls, Hanwha truly has a great partnership with our end users in trying to mitigate those risks. That's a foundation that we want you folks to walk away with, that our devices are resilient and strong. And Aaron, do you want to talk about the controls, please?
Yeah, sure. So Hanwha has a lot of different ways that we protect the cyber aspects because like you just mentioned, Omar, it's not just about, oh, is this camera safe? But it's also about your network, everything that's attached to it. It's about your risk management. It's about all of that. So we've adopted quite a few things, one of which on the top here is the UL CAP, the UL Cyber Assurance Program. We have specific models that have gone through a rigorous testing process by the UL, specifically for cybersecurity purposes. We have a dedicated cybersecurity team here at Hanwha that looks at the way we design our products all the way to the finished product and testing them to make sure they're done properly. We have various documentation on our website, hardening guides, things like that. But we also comply with the UK Home Office secure by default provision, which says that out of the box, we don't have default passwords. We're not running Telnet. We're not running SSH. We're not running things that make an integrator have to, configure the product to turn it off to secure it properly. That those things are not in the product, so that they're hardened very well out of the box there. So that's a very important piece there. We do have a third-party pen testing. We do a lot of activities there. If there's ever a vulnerability or an issue that comes up, we will publicly list that on our website. We have a section for any disclosures there. So it's an important piece that we're not trying to hide anything, and we will have that communication to you. And then one other piece, I believe it's on the next slide here, is the FIPS 140 certification. FIPS is a federal standard in the U.S., Federal Information Processing Standards, and it's been adopted by many other governments as well. It's also kind of the gold standard, so a lot of enterprise level customers and IT departments have adopted of saying, hey, that's what we want in any products on the network. What it is it's a way of validating the encryption methods that are used inside of the product. So that way we know we're only using secure encryption and non-encryption that's been broken years ago. And so many aspects of a modern IoT device on your network uses encryption. So we want to make sure it's done, implemented properly so that it can be used by the federal government, enterprise customers, things like that. And one of the main ways that it's implemented is using TPM or Trusted Platform Module. So TPM is a hardware component in the camera. It does things like being able to create random numbers, which are used kind of the root of any encryption, as well as it has some storage so that certain things like encryption keys can be securely stored in the camera, cannot be tampered with, cannot be altered, cannot be modified by rogue firmware or a hacker trying to come in and do something. So it's kind of the gold standard. We saw that 10, 15 years ago, laptops started using TPM, and that's now standard. And now we're seeing that shift to these IoT type of devices.
And I think, Aaron, it's important to note that even though FIPS is not a requirement of the financial industry, because the financial industry is so regulated within the federal jurisdiction, a lot of the standards that are being implemented there are starting to roll into the financial industry. So we're starting to see some of our largest financial customers looking at deploying the TPM modules.
Absolutely. And also, when you look at data centers, a lot of data centers are requiring that type of certification. And so, data from a financial institute flows to a financial data center. And so often it may need to comply as well.
Excellent. So we're going to kind of transition away from the cybersecurity into what is more, I think, the core of what our conversation is going to be about today. So within our product set and going forward, you'll see these functionalities in more and more of our products across our different product lines. But the ability to take our analytics away from being pixel-based into being object-based. So where the camera can identify through machine learning different types of objects, whether it's vehicle, license plate, person, or face. In this case, we're talking about identifying that it is those type of objects, not necessarily license plate recognition or facial recognition, but rather the absence or presence of those objects within the field of view. So if we can go forward, Aaron, please. So when we look at traditional pixel-based analytics, and simplest is to look at the motion detection. I think everybody's seen false positives in motion detection, whether it be shadows, leaves, just spurious things that appear to the camera to be motion, but is not of interest to the investigator. So by being able to take the scene and not just look for changes in groups of pixels, but rather identify physical objects within the scene, and then base our analytics around those physical object types, then we reduce the number of false alarms. We also increase the reliability in terms of seeing what we're actually interested in viewing in our investigations. And next slide, please.
Hey, Dave, real fast on this too. The object classification also allows us to extend retention. Having that motion of that shadow of that tree on the left corner, always activating the motion, can take up a lot of hard drive space. By limiting the recording to object detection, potentially you're saving on hard drive space and potentially getting more than 100 days or 90 days, whatever your retention policy is.
Great point, Omar. So this is an example of a scene where all of the different object types are present in the scene, and you can see through this view that we identify visually when we're talking about bounding boxes around the types of objects. We identify the different types of objects based on the colors of the bounding boxes, which can be set within the camera, but come with some default colors. So go ahead, Aaron, please. So some of the video analytics that exist on our cameras today that take advantage of the object classification are examples of loitering, virtual line cross, enter and exit. When we talk about the virtual line cross as an example. In the retail banking sector of the financial industry, ATM robberies are becoming more prevalent and follow a similar pattern of, after hours, middle of the night, vehicle backs towards the ATM machine, and then the robbers get out, either break open the front of it or just wrap a chain around it and haul it away. So typically what we're seeing there is a vehicle approaching an ATM from an improbable direction. So if we can create a line cross that is directional to say, if something is crossing this line going towards the ATM, that's some value. But if we create that in a pixel-based analytic, then we're going to get a lot of false positives. Even if we make that object large enough so that most people aren't going to be triggering it, a group of people could potentially also shadows, sometimes headlights driving by that sweep across the area can create enough pixel change that triggers a pixel-based analytic and causes a false positive. But if we're talking about an object-based analytic where the analytic does not trigger unless the specified object, in this case a vehicle, is physically crossing that line in the direction that is deemed inappropriate or that would trigger that alarm. So we have been deploying that particular analytic across a number of our financial institutions and seeing a very good rate of success with very, very little false positives in that situation. Same thing with a loitering analytic. Obviously, a lot of the country, ATM vestibule loitering can be a problem. What we see is traditional loitering analytics based on pixel can't discern between the types of objects that enter the scene and stay. So the UPS delivery person comes in New York City in the middle of the night, can't get into the branch, so just drops a box in the ATM vestibule. A traditional analytic will watch that object and after the prescribed amount of time will trigger. Whereas analytic that is specific to people, and not only specific to people, but can keep track of the people that are in the field of view. So somebody comes in and is there for 9 minutes, and as they're there, somebody else walks in and that person walks out. It restarts the counter for each of those objects. So we're not getting false positives there. We're actually triggering when the criteria is met, that it's a specific object person that has been in that field of view for the period of time specified or more.
Hey, Dave, I have a question for you that some of our guests might want to know. It's all edge-based, so it doesn't matter of the VMS, NVR, DVR, this could all be done on the camera, correct?
Yeah, that's with a caveat. As long as the recording platform can accept camera-based analytic events, then yes. So the majority of the VMS platforms out there do accept our camera-based analytic events. And if anybody has questions about specific VMS platforms, definitely we can address those questions outside of the seminar. Next slide, please. So when we take this to the next level, within a certain set of our cameras, our P series, which is our top end cameras, we can also extract attributes of those particular objects. So if it's a person, we can see the upper clothing color, lower clothing color, presence of a bag, lots of different attributes that we can then search on. Same thing with vehicles. And as we, start going into some of our even, more specialized AI capabilities like our road AI. Then we get into things like license plate recognition, where we can do searching on actual license plate information and so on. But what these objects, the attributes do is within the camera itself, it's creating metadata, which is just text data that is identifying the various attributes and then sending that along with the stream back to the recording platform. So those VMS platforms that support our attribute extraction and then being able to search on attributes, it's just parsing a text file to find the absence or presence of those types of objects. So it's a very light in terms of the bandwidth and the searching capabilities and so on, but brings tremendous value to be able to search for specific types of objects based on attributes and so on. Thanks, Aaron. Next slide. So we're going to show you a couple of canned clips that are going to give you, an idea of what these look like. So, Aaron, if you would go ahead and start the object classification.
Absolutely. Give me 1 second. Let me just pull it up here.
Yep.
Hopefully you can see my screen here. I'm going to pause it to kind of set the stage here, unless you want to do that, David. What we've got is we've got a screen recording of my VMS, and we have overlaid on top of it a virtual line on the left here in yellow, and it shows you the direction. Is it one direction? Is it bidirectional? And these are overlays. These lines and stuff can be turned on or off. They're not burned into the image, but it helps if someone's monitoring the system to see where things are happening. And then on the bottom, we have a virtual area, and we're saying if something enters into that virtual area or crosses that line. And again, like David mentioned, in the camera, if this is one of our AI-enabled cameras, we can say only when a person crosses the yellow line or when a vehicle enters the blue area or whatever combination we want to do. Some of our cameras can actually have even further granularity in terms of things like a car versus a truck versus a bus versus a bicycle. And you can have that granularity there. So I'm going to play this and you'll see that we can scrub through the video here in a moment. We're just getting it set up here. On the right-hand side, we have a list of bookmarks. In many VMSs, you can tell it, take an action when a certain thing happens, when an object or when an analytic happens, create a bookmark. Great. And then when we have an object here, we're able to, see an event. Here's a person crossing by, and you'll see we have a bookmark that pops up. So we had the VMS ingest the event from the camera to say, hey, a virtual line crossing of a person on this line, create an event on the VMS. And then we can very easily search on that, even if the VMS has not been, upgraded, so to speak, to handle the full AI experience. And then in a second, we'll see the virtual area at the bottom. We'll see a vehicle coming through there and creating that event from that entry into that zone. Anything else to add? Any other comments there, David?
No, I think that was great explanation of those two types of events, and so
Perfect.
I'll let you go ahead with the attribute.
Yep. And then here's another video that I recorded showing, an outdoor camera in a parking lot. And we're able to, put our mouse over different objects and it shows, hey, it's a car if I wanted to see that. We can then do things like advanced searching and say for one camera or multiple cameras, show me all the people. So it's filtering out any vehicles. I can then choose by the clothing color or, again, if they have a hat or other attributes there. For each one of these tiles that come up, I can then click on it and play back the video on the right-hand side. And then you can also further filter the records from there. When you also go to a vehicle, let me just fast forward a little bit. We can clear that. There we go. So I put in a vehicle, I put in bus in yellow. You can see, well, there's a school bus, obviously. And then you can change some of these other colors to say, show me an orange vehicle, yellow vehicle, green, purple, whatever it might be. And you can see within a couple seconds, we're able to get that forensic detail. We're able to search into my video very quickly and easily to find, when something happened.
Yeah.
So Aaron and Dave, to put this in perspective in banking, let's say there was a casing and we're trying to figure out, did this vehicle come by throughout the week, and we know it was a white car. There's a potential to be able to go back into the system, punch in white car or white truck, and then look just for all the white vehicles that were in that parking lot to see whether or not there was a casing. Maybe there's a better image of the individual and that we can identify the individual. We weren't able to do that during the incident. Right. So the AI allows for better search capability for incidents like that. Or it could even be a person that walked in with a blue hat or a bag. Did they walk in earlier that morning to, the day of a robbery or an incident, or fraud cases, right? So there's a lot of value to these attributes.
Yes. And also, like you said, the idea is to speed up your search of not having to look for every time there is motion, not having to take hours to search through, but taking minutes or seconds to quickly get a picture of what happened there. Yep. Right. And then one last thing I can just show very quickly, hopefully this will work, is, David mentioned we do have some cameras with license plate recognition capabilities. So this is showing the same thing. This is a camera set up in a very specific field of view, looking at license plates. And if I zoom in, you can't probably see it's in 4K, but on the right-hand side, it's showing me things like the make, the model, the color of the vehicle. So we can see, oh, this is a Nissan Sentra with Massachusetts plates with this license plate. And you can then search on that. You can say, show me all the Nissans, show me a white sedan, show me New York plates, and being able to get to that video very quickly and easily. So if you have things like, a drive-through teller lane or whatnot, this could be very beneficial. And it's, again, using the same AI capabilities to detect that's a vehicle with a license plate and extracting that information from it.
Yeah. And I see value on this one too, like cash vault operations where guards are taking logs of vehicle license plates and truck numbers and all that kind of stuff. This could potentially, provide an efficiency with something like this.
Right. And same thing here. You said about a cash vault, right? If there's a whitelist of allowed vehicles, right? When this vehicle appears, open up the gate or whatnot. So that can also be integrated as well, or a deny list for known vehicles that should not be allowed in.
All right. Go ahead to the next section. So Omar is going to walk us through some of the cameras that are specific in the retail branch banking sector, and then we'll talk a little bit after that about some that are more generally designed for the rest of the financial industry. So.
Thanks, Dave. So we have our PNM 9000 QB. Our PNM 9000 QB is a multi-lens camera. We can put up to four, basically, we can put 4 lenses on that one camera. It's one single IP address, one license if your VMS requires a license. We have our display of lenses down below. Our lenses come in different form factors. We have barrels, and I call them 90-degree lenses, from 1.6 millimeter all the way up to 4.6. Their fields of view are 73, 138, and 187 respectively. We have a 2.4 that kind of is a sweet spot lens that we use a lot, or we see a lot of folks using in ATMs. We have a lot of fixtures that these lenses can go in. We have the height strip. We have mullion mounts. We also have dome mounts. And so imagine an ATM room with 2 ATMs, and you need a camera in each ATM. One 9000 QB could take care of the 2 lenses inside the ATM. You can get a dome mount in the corner of the ATM. Now you have an ATM camera also looking down on the ATMs for, let's say, alarm verification or validation, or if you need to, like each time the ATM chest is open, when we need a lens to kind of see, we don't need to see everything that the person servicing the ATM is doing, but we kind of have an idea of what containers are going into, what they're doing. So this is an option here with the 9000 QB. Our next lens that we're going to show, go on to the next slide, please, is our ATM lens. So we have an ATM bracket. This is a kit here. This is our XMB 6001. It can be ordered as one unit or one SKU with that lens. And I believe the part number is H6240 alpha. The thing to remember too, though, is that this ATM mount could be used with a 9000 QB. So the camera fixture or the camera that we saw previously, you can basically buy that ATM mount separately with that lens separately and add 2 or 3 or 4. Like say that example in that picture there where we have 4 ATMs, that could be one camera on those 4 ATMs potentially.
Right, and that translates to license savings on a lot of EMSs. Yep.
Exactly.
IP address and PoE switch port count as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
The other thing is, let's go to our next lens. We have, which a lot of people call our bandit barrier fixture. This fixture can be placed outside a bandit barrier application on a tower line. The length of that fixture can be cut down. So if you want it to be 6 inches up, you can make it work that way. If you want it all to that height that it is there, you can do it that way too. We just came out with our new 9002 QB, right? Or what was it? Our new camera fixture?
Yeah, so we've introduced this lens mount for the 9000 QB as well as the door jamb mount for the 9000 QB as well. Just released this month.
Actually, this week, I believe. So the good thing about that is now this fixture with those lenses, with the lens that fit inside this fixture, you can put one camera to 4 tower lines with this fixture and potentially be able to cover, 4 tower lines or multiples of that. Our next lens or our next fixtures are our mullion mounts, door jambs. Again, you can install these with the 6001 or you can install these with the 9000 QB. We have the ability, imagine this being right. Let's say this isn't an ATM vestibule. This could be potentially a camera inside an ATM vestibule. It could be another exit camera. Let's say your financial institution does not like the height strip. You can put a camera in one of these fixtures up on the mullion to get that exit shot as individuals are leaving. Our next one is our standard height strip fixture. I don't think I need to say more about this fixture. I'll go on to the next one. Our X series cameras. So we have our 9083s, 8093s, 8083s, 6083s. Those seem to be our staple cameras in financial. Folks use these cameras to solution imagery at the teller lines, at entry doors, access control points, inside offices, in the branch offices. These are our go-to cameras for a lot of our customers. They are IR. The X Plus is has a modular form factor to it. I think if you go to the next slide, it kind of gets into that. So the X Plus allows for a fixture or a back box to be installed. And then the module comes in and the guts of the camera can be placed inside that back box, whether it's a 2, 4, 5, 6 megapixel camera, it can be placed right into that, that back box. This is great. Also, if you take a look at the box there, we're showing that it has the ability for staging, right? So if your integrator is putting in, if you are implementing 100 cameras or let's say even 10 cameras, what your integrator can do is they can pop open that box, plug in a Ethernet or Cat6 cable in there and pre-configure the cameras for deployment, right? So all of a sudden the tech shows up and they're just breaking open the boxes and mounting the modules inside the fixtures. And those fixtures were probably installed by a general contractor. So this camera allows for sustainability in the sense that we're not always replacing the back box. If you start off with a 2 megapixel camera, you can come back later and say, hey, I want to put the 6 megapixel in there. You can do that with our X Plus form factor here. We also just introduced our remote, pardon me?
Next slide.
Oh, yeah. So we have our pan tilt rotate for our cameras. So again, think of the X series. Think of the X series with we all know that our X series can be remotely focused. Maybe you don't. I should have said that. The X series typical can be remotely focused and remotely zoomed. So once it was mounted, all the tech would need to do is point the camera to the direction you wanted it to get the basic line of sight. And then you can go back later on and adjust field of view remotely. With the rotate that were added on top of the zoom and zoom, or the focus and zoom, you're also able to rotate the lens and pivot the lens to tilt it to get the field of view. So all of a sudden, the tech just has to put the fixture or the camera up in the ceiling. And after the fact, you're able to go back and adjust the field of view. This also helps out when on implementation, you believe you have the right camera field of view, the right angle, but now all of a sudden there's computer monitors in front of the teller and they're blocking the view of the customer. You could potentially go back there and adjust the view to get the right view for that teller station, for instance. This also helps out. I always used to have a problem with marketing, putting signs up or a Christmas tree or decorations being put up. This allows us to either one, adjust the camera for the new scene, or we call the location and tell them, hey, remove those decorations. You guys manage that the way you guys manage it in your organizations. Anything else on this, Dave?
No, I think that's it. The PTRZ functionality is such that you can do the estimated life on the mechanism is 200 full rotations of the camera. It's not designed to be a PTZ camera where you're manually, following things and what have you. It's very much for installation and ongoing, adjustments to the field of view. But, with 200 full rotation as the estimated life, there's a lot of adjustments that can be made.
Yeah, and the technician literally just needs to, for installation, mount the camera, put the cover on, walk away. Remotely, as Omar mentioned, we can adjust the pan, the tilt, the zoom, as well as the rotation. So full control of the field of view. It's a huge time saver and solving problems like you just mentioned. Yeah,
and the other real life experiences, you have an operator at your security operations center and you have a tech out there on ladder, moving ladders around, right, to do the adjustment. And the operations center believes that's the right field of view. And then someone comes back and says, you know what, that's not quite the view I wanted. That would be me. And hey, let's get the ladder back up there, break open the dome and let's readjust it. That doesn't have to happen anymore, right? So that was a real world experience of something that always used to happen.
Right. And, if you're at a branch, right, you got a guy on the ladder in the way of, the teller lines. If you're in a cash vault, right, getting a contractor there when they're handling cash, right, that's a huge inhibitor of operation that slows things down, whereas now we can do that remotely in seconds.
And the cost for something like this over the X Plus is very minimal. It's just a business decision that organizations need to make. I think it's a discussion with the integrator and the organization, because the integrator doesn't want their techs to keep moving cameras around either, right? That's a waste of time on their end too. So let's go on to the next camera. So on the next camera, we have our XNF 9010 and 8010 and the RVR and RRV. And basically this is our fisheye camera. We have in two flavors, a 12 megapixel and a 6 megapixel. It's one camera, 360. You can create views within the camera. So if your VMS supports it, and Dave, I'm not sure if all VMSs support the views, but if it does, then basically you're creating additional scenes that someone can easily go back and take a look at and not have to de-warp that image.
Correct.
Okay. But this is a good situation awareness camera. That's what I would use this camera for. What's going on, who's where, what are they doing, that type of implementation. The next camera is the TID 600R. I like this camera. I wish I had known about it. I can see a lot of applications for this. It's an intercom camera. The ability to speak to an individual via a VMS is there. Also, it's SIP 2.0. So if your telecom team is willing to onboard it to their VoIP, telephone system, it potentially can be installed that way. You can implement it that way, so that all of a sudden this could be an access control request for entry point for an office space on the 20th floor. And someone comes up, hits that button, maybe a general operation number rings and someone answers the phone, they can unlock the door for an individual, or they can bring it up on video, whether it's on their phone, if the VMS supports it, or on their screen, right? The other app, I like this camera because it's a 1.6 millimeter lens, and it's a very wide field of view. You see 180 right there. I could see this also being used inside an ATM vestibule, where we do need the ability to have a discussion with somebody inside that vestibule, maybe after hours. I could also see this at a drive up, maybe not for the intercom feature, but the ability to put this at a legacy drive up system that had a analog camera in a cavity that's this small, and we're trying to put an IP camera in there. It could be hard sometimes. So a lot of times, a lot of our end users will end up putting one of our 6001 or B or 90,000 QB cameras out there with one of the small lenses, but sometimes based upon cable length, it's not practical, especially because the camera can't be mounted at the drive up system, right? So this is an option to put just an Ethernet cable out there, Cat6 cable, plug this camera in, and it's just another camera on your system. If you want to deploy the speaker and the mic, that's a business decision that the institution would need to figure out how to make that happen, but that is an option there too.
Yeah. So some of the other cameras I wanted to talk about are multi-imager, multi-sensor cameras. We definitely see these very popular across financial sectors, particularly for corporate centers, commercial towers, parking structures, data centers, what have you. So go to the next slide, Aaron. So this is a sample set of our multi-imager cameras. I'm going to touch on a few of these, but just know we have a pretty wide variety of multi-imagers, including the one that we like to refer to as the spaceship or UFO camera, which has 4 fixed imagers as well as a PTZ camera underneath. So we'll go ahead to the next slide, please, Aaron. So one of the cameras that's very popular within our financial industry is the panoramic cameras, and where they are typically used are in similar scenarios to this, where we have a parking lot that we want to be able to surveil. We've tried putting a fisheye camera wall mounted for the 180-degree view, but realized as soon as we start to zoom into the image, it pixelates very quickly, because even with a 12 megapixel fisheye, we're spreading those pixels across a very large scene. So where these cameras take 4 imagers and stitch the image together into a single stream. So it is one camera license, it's a single stream to the recording platform. But when we get out into looking at the periphery of this image, it has tremendous resolution. So we're really taking, in this particular case, 4 1080p imagers and stitching them together into an image roughly 7+ megapixels, but we're focused on the area that we're really concerned about, not the sky and other things that are not of interest. The other thing I will say with this particular camera, which is the 9022V, we are coming out with an IR version of this camera, but even without the IR, this camera has extraordinary low light capability. We have installed this, where it stays color. It's set to stay color even in low light, and the image quality is outstanding. It's also available with 5 megapixel imagers if you have even larger areas that you need to cover, or you're looking for higher resolution. Not all of the VMSs in the banking sector support that particular camera, but I'm not aware of any that don't support the 9022, which is the 2 megapixel imagers. Next. And click again, there we go. So Omar mentioned about the pan, tilt, zoom, rotate, or PTRZ functionality within our single lens camera. We also have multi-imager cameras, 4 imager cameras that are available with 2 or 5 megapixel imagers that allow you this same functionality. So we see these used a lot on corners of the building, or parking area coverages where a panoramic may not be the ideal solution, because you may want to have a lens zoomed into a particular area that may be high traffic area, or what have you, to give that more all-around coverage. Omar, did you want to add anything to that?
No, the real world application on this, a lot of times these are placed, significantly high above finished floor, and, the integrator is renting a lift or shipping a lift to the location to put this camera up. So before it was the pan, tilt, rotate, zoom, if there was an error in the field of view, that lift would have to be brought back, and they would have to get back up to the camera and do the adjustment, right? This, again, the integrator just goes in there, installs the fixture, the camera, and could walk away, and then you can tune your field of view to what you want. That's the beauty of this. I've had that real world experience where I didn't get the image that I wanted, and my integrator had to wait another week before he can get out there because of coordinating the lift being delivered and being in the parking lot and all that kind of stuff, right? So there are some real world applications for this. And again, the delta for this feature is not that great. So that's a discussion between your integrator and yourselves about whether or not this makes sense for you. And then on the 180 versus the quad, when I saw the 180, I didn't install a lot of exterior cameras, but I could see that camera right outside of a branch, above the door somewhere, right? Whatever height that was. And if I had that permission to put that camera up at a facility, then all of a sudden I have a parking lot. I can see people approaching the front door. That has value. If I had these cameras sitting at the corner, maybe I won't be able to get that, that field of view of that person walking towards the camera. I'd probably be getting a side shot. So between the two camera, whether it's this 4 sensor or the 180 sensor, there is a solution for your application on the exterior of your building.
Good point. Next slide, Aaron, please.
And this dual sensor multi-directional camera, it's a great camera. This is the only dual or multi-sensor camera that does object classification. Okay. All our other multi-sensors don't do object classification. And if I'm wrong, Dave, let me know. Okay. But this camera is great for an application. Maybe you do want one-on-one shots on the teller line, but you only want to run one cable. This could potentially be a solution for an institution. This also could be a solution for an institution that wants to do surveillance at every entry door, right, of access control. So imagine this in a suite, and one lens pointing right at the door for access control validation, and the other one facing down the corridor as people are walking away, just for operational awareness of what's going on inside the suite, right? So there's a lot of applications for this camera. It could be inside a branch. It can be in an office space. It could be in a cash counting space. Cash counting, we used to need to have one camera right over counting equipment and then one open camera to kind of see operationally where everyone was at. This could be a solution for that. Also on the teller line, maybe you want one teller line lens, and then the other one could be an operational where you want to see where people are going to the TC telecash recycler, the TCR, and seeing what they're doing at the TCR and not lose the image of the person standing in front of the teller.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, there's so many different applications. One I've seen is stairwells up and down view. So, there's just a lot of different application for this camera, and then being able to tie the object classification into that as well is just really powerful. All right. So we just, listing some of the VMS platforms out there that are prevalent in the financial sector, and some of our partners, Genetech, particularly Milestone, that support all of the capabilities of our object classification as well as attribute search, as does Exact Vision. I know that Salient is working towards it. So, and Solink has that capability as well today. So if you have specific questions around the VMS support, certainly talk to your VMS manufacturer or reach out to us, and we'll help you to understand how and what features and functionalities are supported in the individual VMS platforms. So that's the content that we had for today. Appreciate everybody being on, and if there's any questions, the Q&A session is open.
I think we answered all their questions, huh?
All right, if there are no questions, again, we really appreciate you being with us for this presentation. It is going to be available online as well if you want to share it with anybody or review any portion of it. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and close out.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.